بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Once again. No. That's not good enough. You know who we have here? The pearls of Islam. They stand for peace. They stand for peace. And if we greet you with peace, we want to hear the peace back, man. Assalamu alaikum. I can feel that. Can you feel that? We can feel it. You know, I'm not so good at that. Wait till you hear Rabia get you going. Yeah. Wait till you get Rabia get you going. Anyway, before, I don't want to take much of your time. The verses we read, it's a simple verse where God, in the Quran, Allah talks about Him and His angels. They send blessings on who? On the Prophet Muhammad. God Himself, Allah and His angels send blessings on the Prophet Muhammad, and He's encouraging us to do the same. To send blessings on Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Why I read this verse is because this is what my sisters do day in and day out. All they do is praise, and praise. But they do it with such beautiful rhythm. I tell you, what I'm asking you to do is forget about your worries. Forget about your pain. Forget about it all for a moment in time. You know, life is like a string of pearls. You see what I did there? You see what I did there? A string of pearls. And this is one moment in your life. It's one pearl. I want you to go inside that pearl and stay there in its glistening light and remain there and absorb the rhythm, absorb the movement, absorb the sound, absorb the beat, but most of all, drown in the love that these two amazing human beings have to offer. Drown in that love. I know their parents. I know who they are. That's all they stand for. So it's a beautiful treat for you. I give you, everybody give it up for our beloved sisters, Pearls of Islam.
لضلالي يا بدراتي يا بدراتي من هذا كل كمالي ماذا يعاب ماذا يعاب درعا الأولى كما قالي اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله. Sending salams and love to everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, beautiful, mashallah. We began following on from Sidi Hassan. We saw beginning in the salawat, in the praises of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Thank you so much for coming and sitting and sharing and being with us. My name is Sakina, this is Rabia, we are the Pearls of Islam. And we invite you all to, this is not a performance, we don't perform. Performing is very, even though it looks very official, kind of we're here and you're here, we're going to invite everyone to join us together so that it's a sharing space, okay? So feel free to clap if you want to, feel free to sing if you know the words, feel free to smile, right? You know, Bismillah, we're praising, okay? We're praising, and when you're praising, you should be happy. So we're going to begin with a salawat, a song called Salat al-Badriyah. صلاة الله سلام الله على طه رسول الله صلاة الله سلام الله على ياسين حبيب الله صلاة الله سلام الله على طه
proper like excited and happy to be here in Glasgow. So, like Sakina was saying, we invite you to participate in however you're feeling comfortable. That can be singing, even if you don't know the words, humming, smiling, clapping, breathing, right? It's participating. So either way, whatever we're doing, it's going to be a way of us participating in this song. So the next song that we're going to sing is called Beat of the Heart. Okay, and Beat of the Heart, it was written many moons ago, right? Many moons ago. And it's a reminder to us that there's a beautiful teaching that everything in creation is praising the divine. Right? Everything in creation is praising the divine. From the moon, from the stars, from the rain, which we get a lot of here, which I love. From the flowers, the bees, the trees, and even our heartbeats are constantly in praise of the divine. But it's really for us to just stop and to listen and see if we can hear that praise. So this is that song.
Allah, 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 Allah.
And there's many names to Allah. Some of us will call Allah. Some will say Ya Rahman. Some will say God. Some the divine, the supreme being. There's so many different names for the divine. There's many hearts that somehow have many names for them.
Allah, 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 Allah,
love to do, one of the things that we try and do is there's some really beautiful, powerful Sufi poetry. As we're in this festival, it's a celebration of the Sufi teachings and the Sufi way. But some of this poetry and some of these teachings, they're not written in English. And I fully understand that English doesn't do it justice when you translate it, but we try. And so has anybody come across an amazing Sufi poet called Bulleh Shah? Just like the wave of hands or okay. So I came across Bulleh Shah on YouTube, not him personally, but his work. And I came across him via a Coke Studio sessions. And there's an amazing singer called Sain Zohor, and he was singing a Bulleh Shah poem. And I didn't understand a word of it because it was in Urdu. And my Urdu is it's not as good as it used to be. So I didn't understand a word of it, but I felt it. I thought this was such a beautiful poem. So I Googled it, and I found a really beautiful translation. And so this is what this song, this is where this song came from. And it's just a reminder that we can get really caught up with a lot of rituals, there's a balance. We need the physical, but then we also need the spiritual. So this is what this song is about. It's actually called, okay, we're really bad at naming our songs. This is actually called Bulleh Shah. The Bulleh Shah song. Yeah. But the poem is actually called One Alif. Because all you need is one Alif, and he's saying all you need to know is God. Right? You just need to know God. Once you know God, you don't need to know anything else. So that's it.
You read so many books to know it all, but yet you fail to ever read your heart at home. You rush to the holy shrines to play your part, but yet you fail to ever enter the shrine that's in your heart. Every day you fight shaitan, but you never fight your own ego. You are quick to attack the evil one, but your pride is a battle you have not won. You try and grab what's in the sky, but you never grab hold of what's inside. Let the race end, my friend. Stop trying to be the one who knows. 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 And yet you fail to ever enter the shrine that's in your heart. Every day you fight shaitan, but you never fight your own ego. You are quick to attack the evil one, but your pride is a battle you have not won. You try and grab what's in the sky, but you never grab hold of what's inside. Let the race end, my friend. Stop trying to be the one who knows. Stop trying to be the one who knows. Stop trying to be the one who knows. Stop trying to find Allah. Stop trying to seek Allah. Stop trying to know Allah and you will know.
So this last song is dedicated to every single one of you in this room. It's called, I'll tell you what it's about, and then you can tell me what you think it's called, because that last song was called Ahmed Ya Habibi, Salam Alaikum. We're not really good at naming our songs, it's called Ahmed Ya Habibi. So yeah, this song is about love, okay? It was a poem that was written a few years ago, after one of the teachings of my Sheikh, Sheikh Nazim, may Allah bless him. He is a teacher that teaches the importance of love, and I remember, and I'm paraphrasing this teaching, but he said the importance of being a reflection of what you want to see in the world. You know, if you want to see love in the world, you must manifest love. You must be that love. And I remember listening to that as a younger, maybe teen-ish, and thinking, all right, you know, I'm going to try my best, even though I was a very angry stage. I was like, I'm going to try my best. So we wrote this poem. It's called, wait for it, The Love Poem. See what I did there? It's called The Love Poem, because it's about love. And it's the love that connects every single one of us in this room together. It connects myself and Sakina to every single one of you. Because we are all creations of the divine, so we have love. So we're sending you love, receive it. We don't do refunds, so just take it and do something with it, right? Share it or whatever you want to do it, but just take it. So that's the first part of the poem. And the second part is, has anybody heard, all right, here we go, Sakina, has anybody heard, and if you have, you've got to make, I need to be able to hear you. Has anybody heard of Jimmy Cliff? It's fucking cool. It's lovely. I love it. So Jimmy Cliff, for those that don't know, Jimmy Cliff is a reggae legend. Okay, everyone knows Bob Marley, but Jimmy Cliff is actually those that came before Bob Marley. Reggae legend. We're coming from a Caribbean background. My father's Jamaican, and our mother's from Guyana, and so we were very much raised on old-time reggae. And old-time reggae, and for those that listen to old-time reggae, it's full of basically Bible. It's full of like Bible sayings and church sayings. So it was really nourishing. It nourished us in the oneness of in the importance of God. And so Jimmy Cliff, he was on the Jules Holland show, and he was singing one of his songs, "Many rivers to cross," something like that. I don't know the words. And at the end of this song, he started to sing what we're about to sing. He started to sing these words, right? He started to sing, "Love is my foundation, wisdom is my capital, enthusiasm," and he was singing this section. I was like, wow, this is really, really beautiful. So I Googled what he was saying, and lo and behold, what he was singing, I don't know why I'm doing this, but this is just, he was singing a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, right? He was singing a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So the words that he was singing was something that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had said. And I was so blown away because it meant so much to us that this was like reggae, it's from our tradition, and also it's fusing the Islamic tradition. And we were like, this is so for us. So Bismillah, this is called Love is My Foundation. And it's dedicated to you and our Shaykh and to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of the Divine, the Most Merciful, the Most Kind. You see, I sit and I try and write some poetry. But I do not want it to be flowing from the anger inside of me. I want every word to be embedded with love, carried on the backs of doves to the ears and to the hearts of those that listen to me. I want to be taken to a place where I can hear the birds sing. By killing innocent children in the streets. You see, I'm not concerned about their nationality. I'm concerned because this is humanity. You see, I sit and I try and write some poetry, but I do not want it to be flowing from the anger inside of me, only fueling the frustration and hate in those that are listening to you. You see, we are on a time frame, and there's not enough time or space for my rhymes to be promoting hate. I want to hold my head up high and say to the divine that I chose to love. I chose to love creation, despite anger, hate, war, poverty, greed. I chose to love. So you may call me crazy, call me a hippie, or even a Sufi. Of peace.
he said, love is my foundation, wisdom is my capital, enthusiasm is my home, and firmness is my treasure. Liquor is my friend, devotion is my art, devotion is my art, devotion is my art. And he said, poverty is my pride, and silence is my weapon. Contentment is my reward, and truth is my redeemer. And my pleasure is in my prayer, and my pleasure is in my prayer. And he said, yeah, yeah. When I say one, you say love. One, one. When I say one, you say love. One, one. When I say one, you say love. One, 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 one. Love is my foundation. Love is our foundation. Love is the foundation. Love is his foundation. Love is her foundation. Love is our foundation. Love is my foundation. Love is the foundation.
I told you that you got some special rhythm there. The trick is to take that rhythm away with you into the world. You know that love that they're spreading, it shouldn't stop here. Take that momentum and take it to your streets and your communities and your workplaces and the trains and the planes. This is what we need. This is our responsibility. And this is what we stand for as Muslims. This is what we stand for. This is the vibe we stand for. So, thank you very much, Pearls. I believe we have some CDs. I want to give away one of Pearls of Islam CDs. I have a question. Let's see who can answer this question. And it could be from anyone, from any walk of life. Let's see. It's an easy question. What is the final prophet? There was many prophets. What's the name? It's a very easy question. What's the name of the final prophet? Anybody? Sorry? Sorry? You said something, my dear? Oh yeah, that's right. Can we hear it? Can we hear it? Muhammad? Oh, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We say peace be upon him. I would love to give you a CD. Can I get a CD? I tell you what, I've got one of these and I play it in the car. And the whole family just goes to the movement. I'm telling you, it's such an amazing thing. It's beautifully produced. We only have about, what, 10, 15? So grab your copy from the sisters. You will smile all the way to work. Thank you, you're very welcome. Thank you, Pearls. We're going to just set the stage up.
if you guys can set up for the next performance and presentation. Now, we've got a few minutes break. We'll be back here in about 10 minutes. I highly, highly recommend the next presentation. It's actually nothing short of a miracle, the next presentation. It might sound as a simple presentation, but it's far from it. It's far from it, trust me. I want to see you guys back in 10 minutes. It's something you will never forget. It will be a real treat. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. Oh, hello. Did you enjoy it? Dr. Saab, Assalamu alaikum. rock and roll, why I mention that term, rock and roll, because the beautiful soul that will present to you today, Mr. Peter Saunders, has memories of some of the great rock and roll artists that he used to photograph. Some of you may be too young, but those of you, I'm not going to show your age, you know who I'm talking about. The likes of Mick Jagger? Anybody? There we go, we have a fan here. What about good old Jimmy? Huh? Good old Jimmy that will take you on a journey with his guitar. Yeah? What about the Doors? Well, I can tell you that when one door closes in your life, another door opens. And the individual that we're talking about has gone on a journey across the whole world, the Muslim world, and he was fascinated with what he saw. Like Lawrence of Arabia, like Florence Nightingale, you look at their writings, they will tell you how fascinated they were. But Mr. Saunders was so fascinated that he went and he spent most of his life, some would say his entire life, capturing some memories to share with the world. This book that I have in my hand, and it's weighty. It's weighty. It's quite ironic because the name of the book is Meeting with Mountains. Meeting with mountains. What are we talking about? What are these mountains? Have you met someone where you thought, damn, that was an interesting person? Have you met someone where they didn't say anything and you thought, wow, that person's deep? I tell you something, if you walk into a perfume shop, when you go on holiday, and you come out of that perfume shop, whether you put perfume or you don't put perfume, you will be smelling of perfume, right? I would argue that Mr. Saunders, because he spent time with some of these mountains, with some of these great Muslim saints, arguably, and it's not good to praise people in their presence, but if you can close your ears for a second, Mr. Saunders, arguably I have my humble opinion that he has saintly qualities. I've spent time with him. I know his family. It's a rare breed of adab, of respect, of refining the manners that we are losing, not only in the Muslim community, in the Jewish community, in the Christian community, in humanity at large. We are losing these beautiful qualities of morality, respect, adab we call it. So, 50 years of work gone into this book, a weighty book, may I add. You want to spend some money? Yes, spend some money on this book. It will go on your shelf. You will pick it up and you will read not just the stories about his meetings with each individual, but you will be inspired. Generations later will be inspired. You'll be dead and gone. Like some of these people are dead and gone. Who knows, your great-great-great-grandchild might be reading these books and being inspired by such great individuals. So without further ado, I introduce you to a great man. In my view, he is a legend in the ummah, in the community, because of his experiences and what he's contributing to this world. This is weighty, valuable, blessed, truly blessed contribution to the world for people of all walks of life. So with these few passionate words about a simple, a humble soul, I introduce you to our beloved Peter Saunders. He will play a 4-minute video describing this masterpiece, after which he will go through a detailed presentation of it, and we will have a Q&A in the end. Assalamu
Peter Saunders was one of London's leading rock and roll photographers in the 1960s. capturing images of some of the era's most iconic musicians and the cultural ferment of the hippie scene. Disillusioned by the excesses he witnessed around him, in 1971, the young photographer set off on a year-long spiritual quest that ended in Morocco. In the city of Meknes, he came face to face with one of the greatest saints of the 20th century. In a windowless room without a flash, he captured two iconic images of Sidi Muhammad ibn al-Habib. This seminal moment set the photographer on a 45-year quest to photograph the true saints of Islam. Over nearly 5 decades, Peter Sanders has traveled the world seeking out these luminous, inspiring men and women, and in the course of this journey has become the Muslim world's most celebrated photographer. His acclaimed photographic books, exhibitions, and the workshops he holds around the world have earned him international awards and a global audience. Peter's astonishing odyssey has culminated in an uplifting visual record and landmark photographic book, Meetings with Mountains.
Meetings with Mountains is one man's pursuit to create a photographic legacy of some of the most extraordinary people alive. He has gone all over the world looking for saints and sages to capture a moment of light.
No one ever knows about these people, yet we know about saints in Hinduism and Buddhism and all the other religions. But somehow, other than Rumi, people know about Rumi. You don't find them easy, they're not celebrities, they're hidden away. They don't want anything to distract them from what they do. Their life is just praying and studying, and they live in seclusion. So it's been my mission to find them and photograph them. Many of them have never been photographed before. They don't like to be photographed, as I said, not because they think it's forbidden. They don't want anything that exalts them. Yes.
To do with the ego.
Yes.
Wow.
And so, for some reason, they agreed to let me do it.
This unique celebration of sainthood, of the true mountains of the Muslim world, presents a critical alternative to the distorted image of Islam today.
This is the true picture of Islam. This is a counter to all this extremist position, which has nothing to do with the true world of Islam. This is peace, because these people are peace itself.
Yes.
They don't talk about peace, they're
living it.
Just to sit in their company, you feel peaceful. All your concerns disappear. That's true Islam. So the book is really their pictures, and then what happened when I met them. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome. I have to say this book is a contradiction. It's a book, a project about a whole group of people who do not want to be known and who do not want to be photographed. They prefer to keep out of the limelight and pray and study and serve the people around them. But I feel the time is quite dark, that we need to bring some light back into it. And hence this project took 50 years of my life, it still continues. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to introduce you to some of the people in this project. It's a taste, the book is 380 pages. But I'm just going to tell you some of the stories just to whet your appetite a little bit. This is the ayat of Quran, which talks about mountains, and it says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God. Have not we made the earth an expanse,
with the mountains as pegs. So like the physical mountains, I see these people really as pegs that hold down the earth and give us, remind us of stillness and sanity and humanness. And for that reason, I began this project. The man who is on the cover was 125 years old when he passed away, and I will tell you more about him further on in the presentation. The Prophet Muhammad, I consider him, as all prophets, they are like blueprints for all the saintly people that follow in their footsteps. And these people in this book, really, he is the blueprint in which they come from. And they are all very, very different, as you will see, from many countries. But they all have this light in their hearts. I called the section on the Prophet Muhammad, the chosen one, who climbed the mountain to enter the cave of his own heart, which we know that he did. He withdrew from people just so that he could draw closer to God. And this is Jabal Nur, the mountain that he climbed and where he began this communication with God. This is the view from that cave across the mountains surrounding Mecca. And this is his cloak. Many of you probably know the story of Ghaus-e-Azam. But Ghaus-e-Azam was, we believe, a saintly person. He came to Medina to meet the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. But when he arrived, the Prophet ﷺ was traveling, and his mother was sick, and he was concerned about his mother, and so he waited a few days and then he had to leave. When the Prophet returned to Medina, he said, "There's been somebody special here. Who is it?" And they described Ghaus-e-Azam. He took his cloak and he gave it to two of his companions, and they said, "Find him, give him this, give him my cloak." Now this is often seen as a symbolic gesture, that his cloak is a sign of that he was a saint, and him giving the cloak to him was an endorsement of that fact. This cloak can be seen if you're ever in Istanbul during the month of Ramadan. It's in the Ghaus-e Sharif mosque in Istanbul, and you can see it, and it's beautiful. It's laid out as you see in the photograph, and there's a beautiful smell that comes from it. This is a true story, and this happened to me in the very early days of this project. But I was traveling through Morocco, and I was with a friend, and we were in Casablanca, and I noticed a very distinguished gentleman in a jalaba and with a gold turban. The next day we went to Marrakesh, and I saw the same man there. It's 150 miles away, but by some coincidence, if you believe in such things, the same man was there. He saw me, and this time he came over to me and began to tell me this story. He told me about a story of a man who came to Marrakesh to research and discover the number of saints living in the city. He didn't tell anyone of his project, but he went to the grocer's to buy some tea and sugar while he was staying in the city. Before anything, the man said to him, "You can put me on your list." He was amazed. How did this man know about his project? So the next day he was at the butcher's to buy some meat, and the man said, "You can put me on your list." The man was completely startled. He told no one of this project. He then realized he should give up his search, because he knew that the seeker and the sought are not separate, but that the one is the source of all things, and God knows everything.
Within every country, within every city, within every town and every village and every country, there are saints. Some are known and some are unknown. The first one that I photographed was somebody called Sidi Mohammed Habib, but the story behind that is very interesting. I have a friend, he was an English man called John, and he used to do the printing for my photographs in the 60s. Unbeknown to me, someone said, they gave him this passport and said, could you copy it? So he copied the passport photograph and made a negative and went into the darkroom to make a print of it. As he was in the darkroom with the red light on, and he put the piece of photographic paper into the developing tray, this face began to emerge from the white piece of paper. He was unhappy with the print, so he decided to leave it. It was the weekend, and he decided, I'll come back on Monday and redo the print. When he returned to the dark room on Monday, the print had turned gold. He was amazed. Then, the next few weeks, his life began to change. He ended up accepting Islam, which at that time was very unusual. And then he was my printer. We began to talk. So when I went to Morocco and went to visit Sidi Mohammed Habib in Meknes, and I was meeting him for the first time, and someone had asked me to take his picture. And I climbed the long stairs to his room and entered this room. And he sat there, as you see him in front of me. And there was a stillness in that room that was palpable. And I was introduced to him. And then he said something to me. He said, you have two imams, or you have two guides, really, it means. You have Prophet Muhammad and the Prophet Jesus. That statement comes from great wisdom. He didn't separate what I came from, he joined it together. This is the true wisdom of a spiritual being that really understands that all the prophets come from the same source. There's a line in his diwan, he has a book of poetry which is really like guidance for the spiritual path. It says in one of what they call qasidas or poems, for if a person truly knew the worth of his heart, he would give all he had without hesitation. And if a person came to know the bliss within his soul, he would shed a tear of joy with every breath he took. And I was thinking about this last night. When we're born, the first thing we do is we take an intake of breath. And when we leave this earth, we release the last breath we have. So he's saying, you should remember every breath you have. This man, Sidi Mohammed Rakoshi, used to sleep outside the door of Sidi Mohammed Habib and serve him. Whatever he needed, he was there to serve him. When his sheikh or his teacher died, he removed himself and went right down into the desert, into the Tafilalet, and buried himself there. And he's the most humble person I ever met. For many years, this was the only picture that existed of him. He wouldn't let people take his picture, not because he thought photography was forbidden. He didn't want there to be anything that made him appear as if he was something. His humility was such. One of my teachers told me, the smallest door into paradise is the door of humility. This man embodied this. I entitled his section, The One Who Believed He Was Nothing, but in reality, he was a shining sun. We went with a group of people with the understanding that after Sidi Mohammed Habib had died, that he had inherited that particular spiritual path. When we said to him, we believe you're the sheikh, he got angry with us. He said, I'm not a sheikh, I'm not a fakir, I'm not a muqaddam, I'm nothing. Leave me alone. When he said that, I knew that he was the real thing. He didn't want this position. In 2007, he was then 102 years old, and I still really wanted to photograph him. And I went with the intention to photograph him. And when I said to his sons about photographing him, they just laughed. They said, if you ask him, he will say no. If you want to know the story, you have to read the book. Sidi Ali, one of my favorite people in this book, and there are people that I met just once, but this person I met many times over 40 years. He lived and served the Zawiya in Maknes after the Sheikh had died. His story is amazing. He was a lumberjack, and one day he was in an accident, a tree fell on him and he went unconscious. And while he was in the hospital in a coma, Sidi Muhammad Habib appeared to him and taught him his litany of prayers. And then after that he recovered and he served the Zawiya for many, many years, and I used to love sitting with him. Neither of us spoke a common language, but I felt such an empathy to this man. And he even learned a few words of English. It was eat a lot, sleep a lot, and wake up shwiya. Shwiya means like a little in Arabic, in Berber Arabic. And people used to laugh. They thought it was really funny. And one day I was with a friend of mine who's very intelligent, and he said to me, he's not just saying that, he's saying that to you. That's your medicine. You need to eat a lot, sleep a lot, and wake up a little. And this is 40 years I'm still trying to do that. This was him in his later years. One day I came to him and said, I want you to take me to the Friday prayer tomorrow, because I wasn't sure where the mosque was. And he laughed. He's blind. He said, okay. So I met him in the morning, and he would be dressed like this, and I'm dressed like this. And he took my hand and he led me through the streets of Maknes. We must have looked an incredible couple. And he took me to the mosque and he said, leave me here. And I went in and prayed the Friday prayer. When I came out, he was still standing there. But you know, he's a beggar. There's no social security in Morocco other than what people give him out of generosity. So I thought he was begging. So I went and put some coins in his hand. I thought, I don't want to disturb him, you know, he's getting his provision. And I went back to the Zawiya. Half an hour later, he came back. He said, where were you? I said, well, I thought you were working. He said, no, I wasn't working, I was waiting for you. See, this is good manners to the highest extent. I was his guest, he took me there, he was waiting for me, and he was going to take me back. In my ignorance, I thought he was begging. This is one of the wives of Sidi Muhammad Habib. And I have a musician friend of mine. He's never been to Morocco. He's never met any of these people, and he's had a lot of heart problems, really. I mean, it's a miracle that he still functions and he still plays music. He wanted to go to Morocco, and he was about to have another heart operation. So we organized like a 3-day trip. Very simple. We stayed in a small place near the Zawiya. So we took him to the Zawiya. When we went in, the wife of Sidi Muhammad Habib was sitting by the tomb of her deceased husband. They have never met before. She said to him, I've been waiting for you.
I've seen you 7 times before. She then put her hand on his heart and started praying for him. We were amazed. I said, he's having the pre-op before he goes back to have the main operation. And I just saw him recently. He's losing weight. He's getting healthier. This is the grace of God, really. MashaAllah. I got shown a very bad video of this mountain. And my friend said, would you come and take his picture? I said, I'll come. We drove, it took me 24 hours driving across the desert to get to his encampment. And it was a very simple place, just a few local people, nomads, and then this teacher who was in his 90s. He used to sleep only 2 hours a night. He only ever drank camel's milk. In Mauritania, they say the men drink the camel's milk to make them strong, and the women, they give the women the cow's milk to make them fat, because the Mauritanians like their women to be large. And the rest of the time he's praying and serving his students. So as you can see, his students, whatever it is they're learning, they write on these wooden boards. And then they walk around and they memorize whatever it is they're learning. Then when they feel they've learnt it, they come and sit with the teacher and they recite it from memory. And if they make a mistake, the teacher will correct them and he might expand on whatever it is they're learning. And this is how they memorize Quran and all the Islamic sciences. Anyway, a few days passed, we had still not taken the picture, and I said to my friend, Sheikh Hamza, you need to ask his permission. We're leaving in a couple of days, we haven't taken his picture yet. So Sheikh Hamza asked, and Sheikh Marabat al-Hajj agreed, not for me, but I think from the person who was asking him. This man, very rarely I've been surprised if he'd been photographed before. And he was sitting there doing what he does every day. And every time I took the picture, it seemed such an imposition on that situation. I just wanted the floor to open up and swallow me, but I felt that I needed to photograph this picture of the teacher with his student before it disappears. Habib Ahmed Mashur al-Haddad, beloved by name and beloved by nature. This person, words I find very difficult to describe. He's such a beautiful person. He used to travel as a young man into the deepest parts of Africa where there was cannibalism, and he used to talk to the people about Islam. And many of these tribes would be naked, and then at the end of his talk, whole tribes would want to accept Islam, and so they would just lay them down and just put a sheet across them so that they would be covered while they said the Shahada. They say that 80,000 people became Muslim from his hands, but he told them to stop counting when they said it was 80,000, but they say the true number is more like 120,000. But numbers is not the thing, really. He was a very exceptional person. And this was a picture I did of him a few weeks before he passed away. This one I call Age Hidden by Youth. This man was Habib Abdurrahman Atas. He was from Indonesia, but he was living in Jeddah. I was taken by a lady that knows these people quite well, and she said, I need to take you to see this man. And we sat in the car, she phoned up, and then we waited while all the men left, and then she was allowed in, and I came in there with my wife. This man was 106 years old. He was running up and down the stairs with more energy than any of us, and getting us drinks and food and everything. And during the conversation he said to me, I'm going to live till I'm 111. I said, really? A few years passed, and I was in Saudi Arabia, and I met a young man, and his name came up. He said, oh yeah, he just passed away. I worked it out. He was 111 when he died. The man who's on the cover, as I said, he was 125 years old when he passed away. He was originally from Iraq, and then he lived in India, and then he lived for 60 years in Saudi Arabia. And he used to just serve the mosque. So he served the mosque of Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and then for 10 years he looked after he had a very privileged position. He's one of the few people that was actually allowed inside the grave where the Prophet Muhammad is buried, peace be upon him. And his job was to sweep it out. And he did that job for 10 years. And he is a really interesting person. And I was sitting with him. He used to come to England. His followers used to bring him on a very intensive trip where they would take him, up to Glasgow, Birmingham, Bradford, all over the place. And he's already then, when I first met him, 105. Anyway, towards the end, later on in his life, I was sitting with him one day, and I wanted to ask him about what's actually inside the tomb of the Prophet, because as visitors you can't see, there's a grill in front of it. So I was thinking with my photographic hat on. So I asked him, what's actually inside there? He said, light. So I thought he misunderstood me, so I asked him the question again. No, actually, what's inside there? He said, light. I asked him the third time, and he said, light. But he said, if you have darkness in your heart, you will never see it. I did a journey from Istanbul. We drove all the way through Turkey, all the way through Iran, and we were intending to go through Turkmenistan into Uzbekistan, but there was an attempt against the president, so we had to finish the journey in Turkmenistan. But I discovered that there were two of the companions of the Prophet buried in this ancient city of Merv. And this is 3,000 kilometers from Medina. How these people got to these places is a miracle. Anyway, we went to visit these tombs, and I saw this woman from the corner of my eye in green, and I felt immediately she was a very saintly person. And there was a young man opening up the grave so she could go and visit. So we entered with her, and in my heart I really wanted to photograph her, but I knew there are certain restraints with women in certain Muslim countries. So we were talking, and she told me a story. She had served for 60 years the nearby tomb of Qadri Sheikh Yusuf al-Hamdani. She has been there for 60 years serving all the people that had come. And the light was dropping, and her companion must have read my thoughts, and they said, do you want to take a picture? And I said, if she gives me permission. And she humbly agreed, and I took this picture in the fading light, and it's a miracle it came out. I really wish there had been more women in this book, really. There are many, many women saints, but within the constraints of the Islamic world, it's not always easy to photograph them. There are some, and I have been asking scholars recently, what about the female saints? And they just tell me the men are hard to find, the women are even harder to find. But Habib Ali said when we launched the book in Bradford, it's half and half. Half women saints, half men. It's the same. It's not more men than women, it's exactly the same. And they reach the same heights as men, so there's no differentiation in their being saintly. And the respect that's held for them, I attended a Mawlid in the small island of Lanu, and there's a big saint who's buried on the island, and after the Mawlid, all the scholars and all the sheikhs and all the important people of that area go and greet the granddaughter of Habib Saleh, who's buried there, and kiss her hand. This is the respect they have for these people. The one who rode a bicycle, Sheikh Muhammad Yusuf. This man was 92 2. And he spoke fluent Arabic, and he rode a bicycle every day, and his mind was as sharp as a knife. Many of you may know Sidi Abu Bakr Sirajuddin, Martin Lings. He wrote one of the best books about the Prophet Muhammad in English. At the age of 96, Martin Lings gave a presentation at Wembley Conference Hall in front of a packed audience. He stood the entire time. As I lifted my lens to photograph him, I kept thinking, he looks so full of light. I got goosebumps because to me he looked like a prophet. There was something, I wanted people to see what I saw. And I continued photographing, and then none of us knew 2 weeks later he would pass away. So he was already on his way, leaving the world. There are many that I photographed in this book, many who have never been photographed before. And as I mentioned, not because they think photography is forbidden, but they don't want anything to appear that there's something. But what I noticed was that very soon after photographing them, they would pass away. And I got a little bit nervous because I thought, if the word gets out, no one's going to agree to let me photograph them. And then a friend of mine who has much more wisdom than me said, no, that's why you were allowed to photograph them. They're on their way out, it doesn't matter anymore. There's another line in the Diwan of Sidi Muhammad Habib. It says, then let your thoughts range free before the mountains, and you will find them without doubt to be the pegs of the earth. And I have to add one also disclaimer. I'm not like the Vatican sanctioning these people. These are people that I met. They were my own journey. Any one of you could have your own journey. They're just people that I met. It's not a who's who. A who's who of these people would be a very different kind of book. Really, the book is about me meeting them, what happened when I met them, and the photographs that I took. And really it's an attempt to share that with you and I hope that it gives you hope that there are people who exist like this. They are among us, although we may not see them. If we can learn, as these mountains have, the science of purifying our souls, we can bring back into the world unimaginable balance, beauty and serenity. It is my sincere prayer that we do. Thank you.
Thank you. We will have a short question. If you can remain seated for a few moments. Can we have a first question? Anybody, please? Yes, I'll just get the mic across to you. Yeah, have we got a roaming mic? Yeah, we'll use this one and then thank you, it's on its way. And if you can keep your hands remaining up, so the mic can, I'll spot you and then, yeah, thank you.
Assalamualaikum. I don't know about everyone else, but I think we really enjoyed that. It was something else, and we thank you, especially for my family, for making the journey down to Glasgow, and we've come all the way from Birmingham, because we saw your name on the list and we wanted to meet you. My question is, what do you say to the people who don't believe in these things? How do we, do we convince them? What do we say to them?
That's an important question. You can convince them. You can only be like them. Because those people, when you sit in their company, you feel different. they don't judge you in any way. They just see you at a certain point in your spiritual journey, and they pray for you. If you ask them advice, they'll give you advice. They might tell you, recite this 10 times a day or something, it will help you. It's very simple. It's called spiritual medicine. We have doctors for our physical bodies. We need doctors for our hearts and our spirit. You can, if someone's not open to them, they're not open to them. But we need to be like them as much as possible. I mean, these people have spent their life, and maybe they're souls who return, I don't know, I don't understand all these things. But they're like signposts, and the important thing to remember is, they're not a signpost to themselves, they're a signpost to God. That's why they're so humble. They're not trying to bring attention to themselves, they're just saying, look, you need to go in this direction. And that's really important. So all we can do is imitate them, try and be like them. That's how people change. You know, if you're in their company, you cannot help but be different, really.
I was actually going to pose the question, could you be a mountain? And you asked a question which your response was, yes, become the mountain.
Yeah.
Become the mountain. And there's a beautiful saying, every saint has a past. Every saint has a past. So don't cut yourself short. If there's anything to aspire to, work towards purifying your heart and becoming, some are hills, some are not mountains, but at least you can move towards that at some level. Can we have another question, inshallah? Hands up, please. Yes, on the right, on the left-hand side, if you can get a roaming mic. Yes.
Light from light. I see you. I'm wondering if, and I'm sure there's many people in the audience, if there was a definitive moment where your light came on. There was a mention at the beginning of your presentation where your rock and roll life was just imploding around you. Was there something where the light suddenly came into you because the crack was so wide that it could come in?
Yeah, I often get asked this. People say to me, you know, you used to photograph all these rock and roll celebrities, and then this is very different. But for me, you have to remember, I don't know if you're probably not as old as I am, but the 60s was a very important time of change. It was a time when the period after we'd had World War I and World War II, there was a kind of grey fog that descended onto England. And I grew up in that. And it was a strange atmosphere. And then the 60s happened. And then all this peace and love. The young people at that time were tired of all this. There was this threat all the time of war, another world war. You know, Vietnam was happening, Cambodia was happening, the Cuban crisis, all these things. And people just really reacted about that. So I grew up in that generation. You know, the peace movement, the ecology movement, feminism, trying to eat better, healthier food, interest in spirituality, all these things grew at the time of my generation. And then I started to read things, kind of almost like a light bulb went on in my mind. Yeah, there's something bigger than me. It's not all about me. This is like, there's something bigger going on here. And that quest sent me off to India, as it said in that thing. Now I spend a lot of my life photographing these people. Now photographing the musicians, because I consider them the poets of the time. In times of crisis, people look towards the poets. We're looking for a solution. These are the people with words. They can help us understand what's happening. So then, I'm now photographing. So there was an excuse for me to have a one-to-one with my heroes at that time. And these are my new heroes, these saintly people. And it's still, I'm having a one-to-one with them. For 1 second, I'm in there, reflected in their eye. That's enough for me. Really. And why I got this job, I don't know, really. But I'm ever grateful to God for giving it to me.
And before we take the next question, one thing to point out, that saintly people don't come only
in this package of robes and turbans. So that's also another misconception. Maybe you could elaborate
It's
on that.
very important that, I mean, they happen to be, but I've met saints in suits, I've met saints on the underground. If you're open to them, they will come to you. It's really, they're around us all the time. The trouble is we live in a state of fear. There's so much fear around in the world at the moment, really. And we need to cut through it somehow. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of financial pressures on people. We need to find that place inside ourselves that's calm and quiet. Sit by yourself and you will see them. You'll see them without traveling, really. They're around us, really.
Okay, and the second question, or third question. Where are you? I can't see you. Yeah, there we go.
My question is that what was it like when you started photography, and like what did people think about it?
Particularly with this project?
Yeah.
To be honest, it wasn't a project when I started. You know, I photographed Imam Habib and then I ended up photographing all the people around him. And actually when it came to write the book, you know, my friends who were helping me, I'm not a writer by any means. I had to learn this because I just didn't like my writing. It was very emotional and didn't seem to explain. So I worked with people and they'd say, well, what happened when you actually met them? And I said, well, I don't know, I just photographed them. I didn't really think about it, you know. But obviously over the years I've had to take more attention. But, you know, I just asked them to photograph and I photographed them, I did, because that's my job. And then some of the transactions, if you read the book, it's very interesting because, as I said, many of them had not been photographed before and I had to kind of, not coax them, but somehow get them to trust me enough that I had a good intention and it was not a bad intention. And it was a journey for me, really. I mean, and it's called Meetings with Mountains. I think the last 3 months when we were finishing the book, I felt like I was climbing the highest peak of Everest, really. It was, I tried not to let it be stressful, but it was a lot of pressure. It went through so many changes and I felt it was out of my hands towards the end of it.
Here in the front row, please.
I gather from your talk that you were a Muslim, and just like to have a confirmation from you and how you came to Islam. Thank you.
Yes, I accepted Islam I'm not a revert or a convert. The way I describe it was, if someone invites you to dinner, you can accept or you can decline. And I travelled around India looking at all different religions. I met Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, I met every religion. And this was my quest. I mean, I went there to really, I wanted to find out. And there's one thing that happened to me, which at the time I didn't register at all, but I was on a platform of a very busy, crowded station in India. It was before dawn, it was full of people. And when you're in India, it always seemed like the whole of the nation of India is on the move. Everyone has all their possessions with them. It was very chaotic. Within all this apparent chaos, I saw a woman, an elderly woman, roll out a prayer mat and start to pray. I'd never seen the Muslim prayer before. I went over there and there was a young man. I said, what's this? He said, this is my grandmother. She's a Muslim and she's praying. Oh, okay. Now, if you think about it, God showed me in a snapshot what the prayer is. It's about stillness. It's about withdrawing from what's happening around you and finding that point within yourself, that stillness. Every society has it around the world. Every people, culture have something that they do where they step out of time. We're probably the worst of it because we're so time obsessed. But traditional societies always have it. So these things happened. And then I ended up with a teacher in India who was by birth a Hindu, but who had followers who were Sikhs, Buddhists, Muslims, and I was with him for 6 months. I came back to England and
when I got back, some friends from the music world had become Muslim. I thought, this is strange. Why is Islam being presented to me now? I was still meditating at that time. And then various things happened. One, which is a very personal thing to me, but in the dream, my Indian teacher was standing at the door of a classroom, inviting me into the classroom, and in the classroom were my friends who'd become Muslim. So for me, it was an easy thing to do. It was a leap of faith. You have to remember, in the 1970s, very little was known about Islam. There was no extremism. I think someone at that same point now would be faced with a lot of questions. This extremism is something that's happened, you know the history of it in the last 20 years. And it, as I said to you, it's nothing to do with Islam. It's nothing to do with any religion. Religions have a bad name now. Religions have got so bad that people don't want anything to do with religion. They want spirituality, they want calmness, they want stillness. That's why mindfulness, meditation, all these things are popular. Everyone, we're all looking for the same thing. We want peace, we want the world to be at peace. Look at what's happening to the planet. We're at the point of destroying the planet. We can't carry on the way we are. Something has to change. Inshallah, with God's grace,
Inshallah, with God's
things will
grace.
happen, inshallah.
The lovely lady in the front row, please.
Hello, Peter. I came here today specifically to come and see and listen to your talk. In 2008, I travelled to Saudi Arabia to join a team of 130 women teachers in Riyadh who were going to work from all over the world, who were going to work in a new university for young women, who were going to study and allow them the opportunity to move forward and learn to take a career or make choices in life. I'm a kind of small photographer. I've always liked to take photographs since a child. And I went there really excited and took my camera and thought, this January I can record in some small way. And I met with a lot of advice in the staff room. No, you cannot take photographs, and explanations of why people didn't want to do that. I met some women who, like you, said, oh, go on, you can just take one. You take a photograph because I know you're not going, you're taking it for a different reason. And I met a couple of women there who actually spoke about you and had heard of you and your journey that you were on, and we talked about it and that you were travelling around and this is what you were doing. And when I saw the Sufi festival being and your name involved in it, I thought, well, I'm going to go and see it. And I'm very happy that I came here and saw your work and met you today.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
You're very welcome. We had a few hands in the back. If you can just one or two more questions and then we can wrap it up. Yes, the gentleman in the back.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for your wonderful work and coming here to share it with us today. I wanted to ask, given your journey and your conversion to Islam from such a different background, was that at all stressful, or was it a big change in sort of practical lifestyle and social circles, and how did you deal with that break from your past?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Unlike, I didn't have this big moment. It's really my life. I'm the same person, really. I hope maybe I'm a little bit more patient and maybe have a bit more empathy for people. But I'm the same person. I don't see it as a big thing. And I'm very English. I don't talk, the gentleman asked this question. I use my English name. Islam has got such a bad name. It's a big responsibility to say you're a Muslim. If you say you're a Muslim, you have to behave like a Muslim. There are so many people who call themselves Muslim, and you've seen what goes on in the world. And this is within every religion. It's very personal to me, my relationship with God. And it's a very English thing. I never discovered until after my father died that he prayed to God every day. I never knew that when I grew up with him. This is personal. And I'm kind of uncomfortable being a Muslim on my sleeve, really. This is my own journey, it's my own personal journey. But what it's about is, it's about us being together as human beings. We need to accept one another with all our differences. We need to find ways to get on. We need not to fight over things we disagree about. We can agree to disagree, really. I mean, it's just what happened. Did we learn nothing since Cain and Abel? We're still repeating the same things in the world. Look what's going on at the moment. Things have to change. Inshallah, it's in the hands of the youth. Really, this project is for the youth. I dedicate it to the youth for the next peacemakers. Really, we need to bring peace to the world. It's so important. Whatever way you can work for peace, do it in a small way. It's just, really, this is our responsibility for being here. We have a reason why we're here. Each one of you has some unique gift to give the world. You just have to find out what it is.
Any question from the top tier? Okay, I'll have the honor of asking the final question. Is there any? Okay.
Thank you so much, everybody. Please, really, I appreciate you coming and remember me in your prayers.
Remember us in your prayers. You were talking about the youth, and for those also youthful hearts.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
You met some of these great individuals. You were talking about the blueprint. All their blueprint was the Prophet Muhammad.
All the prophets.
And all the prophets, as you said. What ingredients can we take away, even if it's a little seed, that we could continue on our journeys and become little hills or even mountains ourselves?
I think we all need to learn to breathe again. I've had to learn to breathe again. Doing photography was very stressful for me. And life can be stressful if we let it. I read a really interesting book. I really suggest it to read it. It's a very small book. You can even, if you don't want to buy a copy, there's a free PDF online. It's called The Game of Life. It was written by an aristocratic woman from America called Florence Shinn. She begins the book. Most people think life is a struggle. It's not a struggle, it's a game. But it's a game that needs to be led by specific spiritual rules. If you give out love, you will receive love. If you give out hate, you will receive hate. It's an easy thing. We just have to learn it. And when we find ourselves getting angry, we just have to breathe in and just, no, everything's fine. Everything's fine.